Less than 1 year to 2023 general elections in Nigeria, political actors in both the ruling All Progressives Congress, the APC, and the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, are sharply divided on the issue of zoning of the presidency. But recently, some northern politicians are beginning to add their voices to the call for a southern president ahead of the 2023 polls. Last week's interview on The Morning Show, President of the Middle Belt Forum, Dr. Bitrus Pogu, reiterated that Nigeria's next president must come from the southern part of the country. Pogu insisted that the Middle Belt Forum will not support any northerner as presidential candidate. Likewise, in a statement credited to Governor Rotimi Akeredolu of Ondo State, it was stated that no southern governor would support any presidential candidate from the northern part of Nigeria. And in the South-South region, Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike, last week, while speaking to PDP stakeholders at the Government House, Port Harcourt, had warned against undermining the interests of the South in choosing the party's presidential standard-bearer. Joining us now from our Abuja studio on what seems to be an unending discourse on where Nigeria's next president must come from is Ahmed Buhari, a former presidential candidate of the Sustainable National Party and African Union ambassador. Good morning, Ahmed. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, good morning, Tundu. Good to be here.
Good morning, Ahmed Buhari. Thank you for joining us. Well, Tundu already, I set the table for this conversation. Where do you stand on the issue of zoning? Southern governors and socio-political leaders are saying, look, for 2023, it is a turn of the South and not the North. Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, former vice president, has also been quoted as saying, oh, no, the Constitution does not talk about zoning. And so it doesn't matter, anybody can run. And you know, of course, the position of the northern leaders of thought. What's your own position? What do you think?
Well, good to be here. Good morning, viewers. I think what is very fundamental here is to look at the country in its totality. Where do we stand as a people? How united are we? Where do we intend to be in the next few years? How do we intend to make every segment of this country, whether based on religious, tribal, ethnic, or even social status, feel about the entity called Nigeria? Without a question in my mind, I feel very ashamed when we all sat down here like 10 years ago and tried as much as possible to discourage former President Jonathan to contest because we felt it was the time for the North to complete its 8 years after the demise of former President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. But now this is after 8 years of almost 8 years of President Buhari, and a lot of people are still talking about whether it should go south or go north. In my opinion, for the sake of equity, justice, and fairness, from all angles, looking at it in a way that we can actually look at everybody and say, this is how well we have built this democratic space. I think it's time for us to support a southern president, in all honesty. And I hold no words back. At the same time, I've tried to have this conversation with everybody from the South to say, look, if we want this power shift to the South, to the Southeast or Southwest, in my opinion, I'll prefer the Southeast. It's important for us to also look at it from the angle of whether we've got competent people in the Southeast. And by all means, we do. Because when you look at it, this country is so blessed. When you look at people from the Northeast, the Northwest, the North Central, Southeast, South-South, or Southeast, or South-South, you find out that we have people who are competent from all of these areas, from all of these regions, based on competence level, based on experience, and based on acceptability of the Nigerian people. But what is most important for the Southerners to do right now is to actually consult, is actually present themselves like they are truly ready to politic. Because the game is politics, whether you like it or not. You cannot use words like we must, we must, we must. What that does to the mindset of the other people is, are you going to take it by force? How do you want to do it? If we have to go to the polls, then you have to now consult with the people from other parts of the country to make them build that trust in you, to make them build that understanding in you. And contrary to the opinion from a lot of people that we do not have people from the Southeast who are competent, who have presented themselves, I think we do. We just need to really we need to relax and then listen to what they're saying and then see who we're going to support moving forward towards 2023 elections.
Well, we clearly do have competent candidates from the Southeast, but I wanted to talk about the youth. Since the whole idea of zoning is about equity, inclusiveness, justice, and what have you, what do you make of the youth involvement in the run-up now to the 2023 general election? As somebody who yourself threw your hat into the ring for the presidential election during the last general election in 2019, what do you think has improved in terms of this third force? Much vaunted, but not that much evidence on ground at the moment. What do you think has improved in terms of youth participation within the two dominant parties and just general youth engagement, not even necessarily candidates, even voters or prospective voters?
Yeah, very clearly from how we've built from 2019 down to 2022, I think there's a lot of awareness from young people. There's a lot of anger, unfortunately. Emotions are running high. And at a time like this, what I keep telling every young person who cares to listen is that in as much as what we're dealing with is politics, we would have to allow our emotions and our sentiments to stay aside so that we face the business of the day, which is politics. I think there are a lot of young people who have awakened to all of this. In 2019, when I ran for office of the president, one thing I said very clearly was, I think 2019, we should have an Igbo president. And I remember we tried to have these deep conversations with certain people who are currently also wanting to run again. But if they had listened to the plans that we had for them in 2019, we would have built a lot of momentum for them by now to run for 2023. Be that as it may, I think there are a lot of young groups within the major political parties who are actually yearning for a space on the table. What I've actually said to most of them is create your table. There's no doubt I've been seeing movements like the We Together across the country, trying to make sure that many young people are involved in the process. And yes, there's awareness, there's awakening. However, we do understand that some of the things that hindered us from 2019 election or making as much impact as we wanted to make was the fact that a lot of people were skeptical about whether we had the competence to deliver. How much experience did we have? Where have they seen us before? But I do like the fact that we participated because we changed the conversation from how people would come to media houses like Arise News and, rain abuses at each other. But now what you see is people are actually truly talking about what ideas they have and how they think those ideas can shape our future moving forward as a country.
Well, Ahmed, do you share the view that this politics of zoning can make or mar Nigeria in 2023? Because as has been pointed out, some of the people who carried the flag for politics, for zoning in 2015, in 2019, are the same people now saying conveniently that there is no need for zoning, right? And then two, are you going to run
yes.
in 2023, and what platform? And when are you going to declare your interest?
Well, in all honesty, you see, that is the hypocrisy in the space. The same people who came out in 2015 and said, no, we have to respect the zoning arrangement so that we can have inclusivity, so that we can have some level of calm in the political space, so we don't heat up the politics so much, so that when we are doing northern zone, we know we're doing northern zone, let the northerners sit down and decide who is going to emerge from the north. If we're doing the southern zone, we'll decide and let it emerge from the south. We keep forgetting that at some point that was what we stood by, and now it's almost 8 years over and we're feeling like, oh, our zone didn't quite achieve as much as we wanted to achieve. I'm from the northern part of the country, but I'm going to say this very freely. I think it's time for us to move this to the south. And if you ask me whether I'm going to be contesting, if I was Igbo, I would have been contesting. I'm not Igbo. I want to see an Igbo president in 2023, and that is why I'm speaking vehemently for the emergence of an Igbo president in 2023.
What do you say to those who say that Nigeria deserves a meritocracy and that in other democracies like America's that we're trying to, emulate, that there's no issue of zoning? So why do we have such a rule or convention here?
I think that is the biggest problem we have, the whole copy and paste technique or ideology that we would have to do what exactly is happening in America and see how it working in our, complex Nigerian space. I think as we progress, our democracy is going to also progress, is going to develop. We're talking about countries who have had a democracy for about 300 years or so. And this is a very, in my opinion, is still a very new democratical space where we're going to be finding our pathways as we progress. However, at a time like this, if we're still identifying our differences, if the National Assembly or the activists who keep yearning for a peaceful coexisting country are unable to push for things like the eradication of state of origin, like the eradication of federal character and things like that, then we still have to think about it when we come to the level of looking at who the president of the country becomes. In my opinion, if it's competence that I stand by firmly, I think we have competent people all over the country. However, by nature of the way the country is structured, there are some sections of this country, not just the Igbos, but even some ethnic minorities who may never be able to produce a president. And I think these are the kind of things that we would have to put into consideration when we're looking at who we're going to be supporting to run the affairs of the country, to lead the country in a way that there will be acceptability from all sides of the divide, so that we can start building that trust in ourselves. And by the time we run this exercise all through the zones, we probably will now start seeing the need for us to support whoever emerges, regardless of where the person is from. And, you know, I mentioned earlier, there are a few people from the Southeast who have presented themselves. I think Audio Okalu said he wants to run. Let's look into his track records. Kingsley Mogalu wants to run. Let's look at how well he has managed government office and see what he can do. We've seen people like Rochas Okoracha. We've seen people like Pius Aim. Pius Aim, for example, was one time the Senate president. That is an entire arm of government. He ran the Senate, and we can look back and say, okay, at the time he ran the Senate, how well did he do? Did he gain the buy-in of the people from other sides of the country? Oh, yes, he did. The Senate was stable during the time, I can remember. He was also the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. At the time he was Secretary to the Government of the Federation, in my opinion, that is also another arm of government that he was steering. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation heads the entire civil service. When we sit down today and we talk about the country, we look at the civil service and we start pointing fingers to the civil service as one of the engine rooms that is faulty, and this man has managed that part. We've seen all of that, and then you now look at his background. He's a lawyer, for example. So I think the Igbos at a time like this will look at their sons and say, we do have credible people. However, we're going to consult. And I think some of them have started traveling. I know Pius Aime, I saw a few of his videos around, and I've seen him on Arise News. I listened to the interview and I was wowed. I'm like, if we've got this kind of materials, why are they hiding? Let them come out. Let the Igbos in the country see that they have sons that can support, and then let them start consulting far and wide across the country, understanding that in reality, what we do need to succeed in a political space is not making blanket statements that cover with must and we shall and we will, but rather to understand that it is a game of politics, and then we would have to consult, and then we'll have to lobby, and then we'll have to charge our way through in a way that we will gain the confidence, the acceptance, and the love of the people, regardless of where they're from. Okay,
Ahmed Buhari, please stay with us. We need to take a short break. After the break, we'll come back to you and the conversation will continue. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. Our guest is CEO Ahmed Buhari, a former presidential candidate of the Sustainable National Party and an African Union ambassador. Ahmed Buhari, thank you for staying with us. Well, what I took from your, contribution before we went on that short break was that you are supporting Igbo presidency. You mentioned at least two names. You mentioned Senator Ojus Okalu. You mentioned Senator Ayim Pius Ayim. But it's quite a long list we have. We have the Ebonyi Governor, Dave Umahi. We have Mazi Samo Hambua. We have Kingsley Mogalu. We have quite a long list from the Southeast so far. Who is your favorite? We also have former Governor Peter Obi that some people are supporting. I'm sure you are very familiar with all the persons that have stepped forward to indicate their interest. So who are you backing? Are you campaigning for Senator Ayim Pius Ayim, who you mentioned twice, or you have a short list of persons from the Southeast that you think you would rather vote for?
In all honesty, I mentioned about 5 names when I made my earlier contributions, and those are the people that I think have actually presented themselves. The only person I actually missed when I was talking about the names earlier was Governor Dave Umahi of Ebonyi State. But you know, looking at everybody critically, I'm judging them based on the presentations that they have made so far. And I wouldn't lie to anybody. I'm tilting towards Senator Pius Ayim, who, in all honesty, has been able to speak about the issues. Also, I remember when you asked him about restructuring, I like the way he presented it. He presented it in a way that everybody will be willing to pay attention to see how some of the committee reports that we've had in the last few years can actually be revisited, or if the people, like you said, would want to have another conference to sit down and talk about our unity or how we want to run our space, he will be willing to let that happen. I think he also spoke about a lot of things that I really warmed up to. Things like, when we build those policies as government, when government builds policies, at what point do they sit down with the electorate, with the people, with the masses, and say, these are the plans that we have, and let the people at that point in time have their contributions into those policies that are going to be developed, so that at the end of the day, you are developing policies that are going to be favorable to the people, not necessarily policies that a group of government officials sit down in the room and in most cases disconnected from the true yearnings of the Nigerian people, sit down in a room and actually present to the Nigerian people what they think should be the way forward. I think those things kind of resonated with me. I think those are the things that we've been yearning for. I think that would give an opportunity for many young people, old people, those in government, those not in government, to sit down and say, you know what, this is the way forward, this is how we want to go, and let those policies be shaped around the true yearnings of the Nigerian people, not what a few people conclude in the room.
Well, your preferred candidate, Pius Ayim, is 60 years old. Did that play a role in your decision? Where do you stand on this issue that has become rather topical of the age of the next president of Nigeria, seeing that there is a correlation between age and health, which doesn't always stand? You'll recall that the late President Umaru Yar'Adua was only 56 when he became president and only 59 when he passed.
Yes, absolutely. And I remember when I was contesting for president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, a lot of people in my bracket at that time were saying that there was an age limit to who becomes president and who doesn't become president. And I remember I said that age is not a function of good leadership. Regardless of your age, it doesn't necessarily matter that that's what is going to determine how well you're going to present good leadership to the people. However, I think that a younger person would be more energetic and more ready to try new ideas and be more in tandem with the huge percentage of the people who actually fall below the age of 40. That is not to say that Pius Ayim at 60 is too old or is old as a matter of fact. I mean, from judging from the names of people that were mentioned earlier, most of them are in their late 50s, some of them in their late 70s. And so it's important for us to actually understand that what would actually make you successful as a leader is your willingness to have the right team in place. It's not a one-man business. It's a government. And if you are not willing to put the right hands to work with you, then you are going to be heading towards failure. Another thing that is very important for us to look at is, I think one of the biggest plus that a leader we're going to be looking forward to having in 2023 should have is the ability to hire and fire. I think we've experienced about 7 years of the current administration having the inability to actually, fire or shuffle cabinets, especially when we do not see results that we expect.
Okay, very quickly. There was a piece I read not too long ago by a newspaper columnist, Donu Kogbara, titled Igbophobia, What Have Igbos Done to Nigerians? And I made an argument. I also had the opportunity of an extended conversation with her. She tried to throw up some of those prejudices about Igbos. And I just want to run a few of them by you. She says, for example, that some people are arguing that an Igbo person cannot be president because Igbos tried to destroy Nigeria during the Civil War. and that because of that, they don't ever have the right to aspire to run Nigeria. Another thing she says she has heard people saying is that Igbos are very clannish, and that people like that should not be allowed. Another thing she brought up is that, Igbos are too mercantile in their approach, and that if you allow an Igbo man, let us not wake up one day and see that certain assets have been sold on behalf of other Nigerians. Ethnic bigotry, what some people will call tribalism. And she tried to knock each of those arguments one by one. And you see some of that kind of attitude in the way certain leaders from certain parts of the country have been dismissing the idea of Igbo presidency. So it's interesting to see someone from the North defending the idea of Igbo presidency. You are probably in the minority, coming from the North. So what really is a problem that most Northerners have with Igbos?
Well, I think that's on the surface level. There are lots of Igbos that we grew up with back in the North. I'm from a very, it used to be a small town, but it's not so small anymore. I'm from Kwantagora in Niger State, and I can tell you for free that we have thousands and thousands of Igbos living there. We have Igbos who have been, turbaned with titles in the North. We have Igbos who run our economy for us in the North, support the economy. We have Igbos who work with us to make things happen for us in the North. Unfortunately, when we come to the political space, we now start turning and twisting everything all over the place just so that it favors us whenever we want it to favor us. But I think if you want to go back to where all of this is really brewing from, I think it has to come from the Civil War. I think we haven't healed. I think the Igbo people haven't healed, and that is why anytime they're talking, they're very emotional about the things that have happened. And I think as a country, if we want that healing to happen, I think it's about time we start, giving them some sense of belonging, acceptability, understanding that in every good there is evil, and in every evil that there is good. And so if I'm a Hausaman, I'm going to tell you very clearly that amongst my people, there are good guys, very good guys, and there are bad guys, very bad guys. Same way in the South, same way in the East, and anybody who is not able to look at it from that angle is not being fair to himself. Because as we speak with you right now, we have certain Igbo people who have not just made us proud within Nigeria, but also outside the country, who actually fly the Igbo flag as high as possible, and they have no shame in it, and they have done tremendously well. However, sometimes we overflog the issues when this person is coming from an Igbo extraction, and I think it has a lot to do with the Civil War. And I keep telling people, we think that war happened and the Igbos lost the war. I think everybody lost. I think we set ourselves many years backwards, and we are still trying to heal. We haven't healed. And if we must be honest with ourselves, I think it's about time we start looking at what we can do or must do to ensure that this very large ethnic group that spreads across, not just within the space of Nigeria, but across the world, who have done tremendous things as well, are given that space on the table so that they can be proud to call themselves Nigeria before anything else. If we're still talking about an ethnic group who is still talking about leaving the shores of this country, even though there's no clear plan on how that is going to happen, then there's a problem. The instability that is causing in itself is worrisome. And I've seen people like Pius Aim who I think I saw a clip from one of the visitations that he made to a certain Yoruba leader who was vehemently cursing and raining abuses on a particular ethnic group. And he said to the man very clearly that, I agree that all of those things have gone wrong. How do we move forward is why I'm here. Well, and that is the mindset that we should all have.
Well, thank you, Ahmed Buhari. I'm sure you make a very good campaign coordinator for Senator Pius Aim. But the issue about Igbo presidency, just by way of summary, it's about justice, fairness, equity. And nobody in Nigeria should assume that one group is doing another group a favor. We're all in this country together, and every citizen, no matter where they come from, should be electable to the highest office in the land. Thank you very much for joining us.